we are. Today is September 20, is it 21st today? The 21st of September 2016 here at the Mood House. And let's turn to Genesis chapter 35. And in order to kind of refresh our minds a little bit, I'm going to ask if those of you could turn there, be ready to read verses 16 through 29. I know it's a big chunk. We're focusing in on verse 22. And just to prep you a bit, we're looking at what could be viewed as a very troubling verse. And what is troubling about the verse, of course, we're troubled about the content of the verse a bit, but really more about how the verse is placed within the context of what we've been talking about. And that's what we're going to be exploring a bit more this morning. But in order to get that context, let's read Genesis 35, verses 16 through 29 with that focus on verse 22. So would someone begin reading, please?
Then they journeyed from Bethel, and when they were still some distance to go to Ephrath, Rachel began to give birth, and she suffered severe labor. When she was in severe labor, the midwife said to her, "Do not fear, for now you have another son." It came about as her soul was departing, for she died, that she named him Ben-Oni. But his father called him Benjamin. So Rachel died and was buried on the way to Ephrath, that is Bethlehem.
Over a tomb Jacob set up a pillar, and to this day that pillar marks Rachel's tomb. Israel moved on again and pitched his tent beyond Migdal Elder. While Israel was living in that region, Reuben went in and slept with his father's concubine, Bilhah, and Israel heard of it. Jacob had 12 sons, the son of Leah, Reuben the firstborn of Jacob, Simon, Leah, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. The sons of Rachel, Joseph and Benjamin. The sons of Rachel's maidservant, Bilhah, Dan, and Naphtali. The sons of Leah's maidservant, Zilpah, Gad, and Asher. These were the sons of Jacob who were born to him in Padan Aram. And Jacob came home to his father Isaac in Merah, near Kiriath Arabah, that is Hebron, where Abraham and Isaac had stayed. Isaac lived 180 years. Then he breathed his last breath, died, and was gathered to his people, old and full of years, and his sons Esau and Jacob buried him.
All right, good work on that, tackling those names like that. That's good. That takes boldness. That takes courage. All right, so I'm going to just dive in here and talk about. We're going to review what we talked about last time. Maybe. So by way of review, what I laid the groundwork last time we were together is that within any story, and this is true of any story, there is a relationship within that story between the teller of the story and the listener of the story. And the story is by nature progressive. It's leading somewhere. And the idea is for the teller to inform the listener so the listener can connect the dots in a way to be brought along in the storyline. You know, let's assume for a moment that the storyteller knows where he or she is going with the story, and the idea is for the teller to bring the listener along within the story. Thus, we have the diagram. The relationship between the teller and the listener is bidirectional, and then there's a movement in the story. Okay, so as it progresses, here's what happens. You know, it's one step after another. There's got to be this relationship going on, and sometimes there's dialogue. And the listener will say, "Hey, you lost me there for a minute. You know, can you fill that in?" "Oh, okay," and you know, it fills it in. The whole idea is that the teller is to bring the listener along in the story. That's the whole thing, to bring to some sort of conclusion. But what we see in this story is something a bit different, and it's illustrated like this. There's what I coined it listener detachment, because what happens is that within this story, verse 22, the teller of the story makes a severe right turn without signaling and goes right in and says, all of a sudden puts this verse in there about Reuben's action with Bilhah, and which is alarming in itself. But what is even more alarming is what doesn't follow. There's no explanation. It switches to an entirely different subject area of naming the family of Israel, Jacob's family, his sons, and not his family, just his sons. So I'm calling that we are left hanging. The listener is left hanging. We didn't make the turn. And all of us feel this as we read this chapter. Well, God, there's got to be something here said about this, and there's nothing said. And so the listener is overshoots the corner, doesn't make the corner, and we're out here hanging in midair, and we're asking the question. That's from a literary aspect, literary point of view. We are left hanging. Okay, so the question is, why are we left hanging? Well, so what we want to talk about is that this isn't the first time in the recent past of this story. I'm suggesting that back a chapter ago in 35:4, we were kind of left hanging. Back in 34, Jacob heard that Shechem had defiled Dinah, his daughter, Jacob's daughter, back in 34:5, and his sons were with the livestock in the field. So Jacob was home alone, and he heard about this news, and he says he kept silent until they came in. And why I identify this is because when we were in that section, I flagged it. This is not the Jacob we knew earlier. Jacob is an action kind of guy. Jacob responds. If we go back into the story, I think we could build a good set of data that would say that when there was an occasion of some nature, Jacob would respond, and we could follow along as the teller, we could follow along as the listener. This put a question mark. He's silent. Why is he silent? Okay, we're left hanging. There's no explanation of why he is silent. Now, an even more severe case is here in 35:22. It came about while Israel was dwelling in that land. Reuben, the oldest son, went in and lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine, and Israel heard of it. We discussed a little bit about that last time. Alan read some footnotes in his text, from his text of what maybe motivated Reuben to do so, a power move to take the position of his father, and so forth. This is probably all true. So that is where we left it last time. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to provide to you an explanation, at least from my perspective, of why I think, this is all speculation, we feel we are left hanging in this text. Why do we feel we are left hanging? I vote for one that there ought to be something else said about this, and there's nothing, and that disturbs me, and I want to give an explanation of why I think why I feel I'm left hanging. You may join me in that, or you may not. And here is my case. The common expectation, and I'm going to say my expectation, but I think it's common. My expectation in regarding how life should be lived is pretty much an arrow. Now, experience tells me this is not the case, but my expectation as a human being is that life should be linear, life should build upon itself over time. My efforts here should be building a life of success, of accomplishment, and so forth. And I should be moving from, and my life should be moving from a lower sense of degree to a higher sense of degree. I've used the word order. I should be able to put together pieces almost like a jigsaw puzzle and to build something of beauty. Okay, that is the, I think that is the common perception. Now everyone in here knows that that is not the case by our own experience and by the experience of those around us. But this is, in my opinion, the expectation. So, okay, so what happens is, as you are aware, that life forces come in. Here are life forces anywhere along this line, and these life forces impact that blue line and create a different trajectory. They're influencing that line, and we call that loss. I'm reading a book about this right now, Necessary Losses, which is from a secular point of view, but it's really fascinating, and how loss is a tool within all human existence to bring about growth. Okay, so loss happens. Well, we are not comfortable with this idea of loss. And so what I'm proposing in this whole thing is that our natural bent, when you and I experience loss, our efforts become fixing the loss. We don't like loss. And so therefore, there's something inside of us, innate. And I would venture to say it's because we're in the image of God. I think it's a good thing. We attempt to fix the loss. We want to, we want to take that arrow and move it up again so we can create higher degrees of predictability and order in our lives. When loss occurs, the natural bent is to fix it. So therefore, here's my conclusion in this whole thing, is that the listener, you and I, or at least me, okay, I'll just say me, I expect to see Jacob attempting to fix this problem.
Immediately.
Yes. That's my expectation. That's what disturbs me. Why doesn't the text tell me what happened? And it bothers me. Okay? Yeah, I mean, you've read the rest of the story. But I want to see action. Okay? And so therefore, it disturbs me. Now, there's all kinds of attempts from interpreters of why it's not there. But my position is that it's there by design. Nothing was left out. I mean, that's higher criticism, that they just left that piece out. No, I think the written scriptures that we have today are fully there as God has intended for us, and we work with what's there and try to draw the richness out. So that's always been my position. So the question, what I'd like for us to do this morning is, at your tables, within each of the comparative texts, that's 34:5 and 35:22, within each of those texts, there is no attempt to fix the problem immediately. There's no attempt. The first one was with Dinah, the rape of his daughter, my goodness. And the second is his son sleeps with his concubine. Those are pretty major things. No attempt to fix. I find that fascinating. Why is that? I'd like for you guys, would you mind meet with David? Could you guys just form little groups, and for 10 minutes, 8 minutes, I'd like for you to discuss that as tables, come up with some ideas, and then for the last 5 minutes, we're going to come together. I'm going to hear from each of you tables, and we're going to write our responses up here, because this is going to be the basis for next week of what we talk about. So I'll give you 8 minutes.